Well, hello and welcome, or welcome back if you've been listening to us to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Ilward, and I'm here with my friend and colleague Jim Gurley. And today we're going to be talking about the word apology, the notion of apologizing or saying that you're sorry. And we can dig into the details of that because, Jim, as we talked about, there's a number of ways to kind of come at that. But I think maybe the thing to do first, like we usually do, is to just read the definition of the word apology. And in Webster's, it basically says apology is an acknowledgement expressing regret or asking pardon for a fault or an offense. And my mind goes immediately, Jim, to this being a worldview. When is it appropriate to apologize? When is it not appropriate to apologize? And I guess, like always, this is going to be back and forth of our different opinions on this. We both have had some experience, and I think we both would concur that there's a lot more apologizing going on today than there used to be. And let's get into that. Let's talk about why that is and what it is. And of course, I think that apologizing every now and then because you made a mistake is certainly something to be expected of a decent human being. But it's a very, very easy thing to abuse, as we've both kind of seen, Jim. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, like you said, Mark, this is a trigger word to me right now. I'm triggered by this word. And in fact, it's timely because I just had a conversation with somebody recently and my question or their question for me was, oh, that's right, kind of re-entering the workforce and dealing with these different generations that, all coming together at once, right? Was people in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and their 50s trying to work together. And my comment was, you know what seems to be just like the first thing that comes out of this generation, I'll say generation, 30s, 30-ish, maybe below or above, mostly below 30, is they start off every conversation with, I'm sorry. So first of all, I understand once in a while, start off a conversation with I'm sorry, but they're sorry eh, because they didn't do something.
Mhm.
And they're either so overwhelmed or they're so oblivious to just being courteous, to have courtesy. I actually think it's uh, self-awareness, of course, but so it's an act of it's not genuine, or it's disingenuous. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
It's
that's
very
good.
disingenuous, meaning that if you have to say it all the time, that means that you're repeating the same thing. You're apologizing for your behavior, for either not returning somebody's call, not following through on an email, not following through on anything. And it seems like that's just become so acceptable and so normal that it's hard to respect somebody that's constantly apologizing to you for something that they did. And so that's why I appreciate your description, or you say the definition of the word. What stands out to me is regret. Their apology is related to regret um, of an offense. Is that what it said? Yeah.
Yeah, for a fault or an offense. I think when I think of this, and I agree, it's kind of a trigger word for me. I think it's just, there's so many things wrong with an inauthentic apology. It puts you, it lowers you in the eyes of whomever it is you're apologizing to. It,
Yep.
it it takes away some of your power. It takes away some of your influence. It takes away some of your credibility. But
Mhm.
the thing that really gets me is when somebody in the public eye does something that offends a small group of people, and instead of saying no, if you take offense to that, that's on you. I'm
Mhm.
not going to apologize for offending you. I had no intention of offending you. If what I said offends you, then
Mhm.
good luck with that. I'm not going
Yeah.
to say I'm sorry for that.
Hmm.
Now, if I make a blatant mistake, or if I tell you I'm going to do something and I neglect doing it,
Hmm.
I think those are instances when you should say sincerely, look, I just want to, let's get past this, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for that. Now let's move on. It's
Yeah.
not something to dwell on. It's not something to be accusatory about. And it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's a wimpy response. I think
Yeah.
it's an easy way to try and avoid conflict when all you're basically doing is say, yeah, I really don't stand for anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, just to add to what you're saying, save it for something that really is important, something for that time or that moment where you maybe, like you said, maybe you did a self-reflection and you came back and didn't realize it before, but you really mean it. And you can gain credibility. And I think that can strengthen a relationship if you've really put some thought into it.
Hmm. Yeah,
And,
what I think is, and I'm just popped into my head, saying sorry for me is difficult
and
because it means to me that I've done something wrong, or I've not done something I said I was going to do. And I think if it doesn't feel difficult, don't say it,
Mhm.
right? If it's easy, it's not authentic. You're just
Right.
throwing it away. You're
Yeah.
just saying, let's not talk about that topic any further because it offends me.
Yeah.
Fuck that, you know?
Yeah. So let's talk about this part, because even though I was criticizing younger generation, we both really make it a point not to become the old uh, crouchy, angry guy in the room. Nobody wants to become that, right? That's like the worst place to be. Uh, but it's how do you deal with that then? Do you just let it go, or do you? Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts about working through this to a point where it doesn't affect you, where kind of pisses off your day or ruins your day, but it will affect the relationships if you really feel that way about them. You can't hide it completely. Eventually they're going to pick up on you, um, your feelings, right? I mean, you've heard me say before, we convey our emotions as much as we say our emotions. Just because you're not saying it, you're sending that signal, that wave of energy that's like, no, I don't accept your apologies,
Yeah.
or so that I think that's challenging to be, because and that on the other hand, if you just let it go, then you're lowering your standards too. And I don't like that either. In
Yeah.
fact, that's one I refuse to do to a certain point. Um, but it's challenging. In fact, I've got a call with the guy today, and part of me wants to come out and say something because I care about him and we have a good relationship. So another part is I know he's overwhelmed. He's got a lot going on. He's in a position of a lot of people are report to him, and he's on overwhelm. So, what are your thoughts about, letting him off the hook versus really uh, confronting them in a very thoughtful way? Not to criticize them, but just say, hey, I've noticed in recent weeks you you say sorry a lot
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not following through. And here are, not one examples, two examples, three examples. That could blow up the relationship if you're not careful, right? Because they're gonna,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's, I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, and which is one of the reasons that came up, but I think some of it has to do with how you start the conversation, right? Some of it
Mhm.
has to do with what the words are that come out of your mouth. And I'm a big fan
Yeah,
of,
and timing, the
yeah,
timing of when you bring it up
yeah,
is
I'm a
is
big fan of beginning conversations on a positive note.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, oh, this is really, want to congratulate you on this, or just want to say, nice job on that, or whatever it might be that's positive, and then say, how are you? You in the mood for some candor? Because I've got some candid things on my mind that I want to share. So I
Mhm.
think it's the approach as much as it is the timing. But interestingly enough, Jim, before I forget, there's three. You know how definitions in the dictionary, there's a primary definition, and then there's usually a secondary and a tertiary
Mhm.
definition.
Mhm.
The secondary definition, I'll read the first one again: an acknowledgement, expressing regret, or asking pardon for a fault or offense. Number two is a formal justification or defense. And number three is an explanation or excuse.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, it is pretty interesting. And I think the third definition is the one that's misused, right? I don't think apologies should be excuses. I don't think apologies should be explanations. I think they should be sincere admittance of wrongdoing in some
Oh,
capacity.
well,
Or
I disagree. I disagree with you. I think that if you're really going to send somebody a heartfelt apology, then you could even start off by saying that, say, hey, I apologize. However, I want to give you, this is not, yeah, in fact, I say this quite often. This is not an excuse. It's an explanation, because there is a difference. An excuse is, quite frankly, excuse is something else is more important than you. That that's an excuse. That's what you're saying. Or you could say, um, I'd like to explain what happened,
Mhm.
because you care enough. Like this, it was a circumstances. It was circumstantial. So this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and it explains why uh, my actions affected you that way. And I do think it's different than an apology. And you're not saying sorry for what happened. You're just explaining what happened. But you cared enough to do that. You cared enough to at least tell them that. So it does it. I think that is different than, for me, that's different than an apology or a sorry. Hey, this is not an excuse, but there is a different excuse. But this is an explanation of why I made that decision and how it affected you in a negative way.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think adding proper context to
Yeah.
something that you've done is always helpful. Context
Mhm.
is missing from a lot of conversations
Mhm.
in this day and age, and I think that, whether you're making an observation or you're making an assessment or you're sharing an opinion, context is very important. So I think an
Mhm.
explanation. I just was fascinated that it's part of the definition in the dictionary of what
I
an
see.
apology is.
But again, here's another way to think of this. You give again, not your excuse, your explanation, and then you give um, a an example of um, what you're going to do in the future to prevent that from happening again.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's pretty powerful, right? That's somebody you go, wow, you know, okay. At first, I didn't really care for this person or the way that they respond to this, but I like them actually more now, because they recognize what they did wrong, and they're doing things to prevent that from happening again.
Yep.
And I think that that's when you can look at somebody and say, uh, it's not a forgiving situation. It is, those are the kind of people I want to continue to work with going forward,
Yeah, yeah, I think it's
versus eliminating them from your life, or reducing your interactions with them, because people that say sorry all the time, they're dangerous. They're dangerous, as in, you don't know what they're going to do or what they're not going to do,
yeah,
and then it's just a matter of time before they put you in a position for you to not fall through on your word.
yeah,
And our word is everything, right? Our word is our integrity.
yeah,
Our word is, somebody trusts us and believes us that we'll do what we say we're going to do. There's nothing more powerful than that. But that somehow has been lost. And maybe because communication is so common now. And let's just say for us, especially when we were younger, we didn't have 55 text messages a day and 10, 20, 30 emails and all these different devices to manage. So I do want to give some empathy for this generation of uh, let's just say this place or this moment in time. It's
yeah, yeah.
an
It definitely.
inflection point of all these technologies coming at one time, and maybe it's just not realistic to be able to respond to everybody.
Well, I
Uh,
think it's to me, it's in a larger category, I think you've said it a couple times, people that say sorry all the time, et cetera, et cetera. It's like if you use a word over and over and over again, and it's very clear objectively to the outside world that you don't really mean it, then it eventually loses its meaning. But think of all the words that have lost their meaning. I
Yeah.
mean, look at racism. Like people
Yeah.
throw that word around all the time. And in my view, I don't listen to it. I don't pay attention to it anymore. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's like calling somebody a Nazi. Come on. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not in Germany in the 1940s, you're not a Nazi. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think sorry is one of those words. Sorry, 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 sorry. Like, wait a second. What are you sorry for? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
like,
It's funny because on Father's Day, I was at a gathering, and somebody had point blank asked me if uh, XYZ person was a racist.
mhm,
And, and I looked across the table and I said, hey, first of all, do you even know what that means? What does that mean?
mhm,
I go, yeah, my first reaction was, that is so not true, but I'm not even gonna go there yet. First of all, I would like to know what that means
mhm,
to you. And then I'll answer your question.
mhm.
Guess what the answer was?
Well,
He didn't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
fuckhead, why do you ask me a question when you don't even know what, and you don't even understand the definition? I say, that's what I think my response was. Hey, how about we agree on what racism means before I try to answer that question or even slightly accuse that person that you're asking about is a racist? Like, what kind of question is that?
Yeah.
Is
No,
he a
good for you.
racist?
Good for you. Yeah. I
And
mean,
again, he cool guy. So it wasn't like I wasn't trying to have a confrontation with him. I was like, hey, let's get that worked out. And I fist bumped him and said, and he goes, yeah, that's true. I get it. I get it. He totally backed off. But to your point, Mark, it's one of those words that people just feel like they can use whenever they want. That's not a word you should be throwing around at all,
oh,
especially if it's somebody that's being accused of that.
it's almost the same as accusing someone of pedophilia or
Yeah,
something
it
like
is. Yeah,
that. Like it's one of the worst things a person could be,
yeah,
and vast majority of people are not so.
yeah,
Not nearly as common as people seem to think and want to say that it is,
yeah.
and so on and so on. Like there's another one that's I've heard it like 10 times in the last day is patriarchy. The patriarchy. It's like,
Yeah, but see
and
now we're actually we've gone full circle. Now we are talking about a group of, let's just say, people at a certain age group that grew up with these words uh, in the vocabulary that they use them with really no meaning like they used to be. They don't even really like literally. What what
yeah,
what the fuck does that mean? Literally,
it's a
but
throwaway word. It's an unnecessary
it's a
word.
filler word. Yeah,
You're either being literal or you're not. You don't need to tell
exactly.
someone that you're being literal.
Yeah. And I do think these words, like you said, have become part of a vocabulary uh, that nobody calls them on.
Well, that's the thing. And that's the thing about sorry, too. You get caught. If someone says to me that I'm a toxic masculine, I'm suffering from toxic masculinity, well,
Yeah,
like, let's break that one down. What does toxic mean? And what is masculinity?
yeah,
Masculinity, when I was young, was a positive thing. It was something that you aspired to be if you were a man.
yeah.
And now all these words, the people that are using all these words, you know what they're seeking? They're seeking an apology from us. It's like, fuck that. You know what?
You,
I'm not going to
you come to the
apologize.
wrong place if you're looking for one of those. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
And this is what happens when and you've had people in your life that have in the public domain that have been either coerced into or asked to apologize. And some of them have said no, and some of them have said yes. And I understand that if you're in a position where you could potentially lose something big, like your job or a relationship, I get that, but that's context. That's
Yeah.
context, right?
Yeah.
And the fact is, if offend someone, let's just say in the gay community, because I said something that was
Mhm.
insensitive,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm not going to apologize for that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that word should not
Yeah.
offend
uh, Do me a favor, Mark. Search this one because I do think this word is appropriate in this conversation. That's dignity.
you. Hmm.
Dignity. So what comes up when you search that word as far as the definition? Because I'll explain how this ties into apologies and sorry and from both ends of the conversation. But
Yeah, it's very simple. Dignity is the quality or state of being worthy of esteem or respect.
okay, so if you start off your conversation with apologizing or saying sorry all the time, um, somebody's giving up their dignity, right? Either the
Yep.
person that's accepting it or the person that is saying it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's good either way. Like, what I don't know which one's worse for the one that's saying, "Hey, I don't accept your apology. In fact, I'm kind of tired of your shit." Like,
Yep.
because it's affected our relationship, and quite frankly, life's too short to be around people like you, right? So
Well,
that
you know, the issue of respect has come up in some of my training stuff and leadership training stuff that I'm doing. And it's really this workplace issue where as people are aspiring and getting promoted and moving up the food chain and they go through these transitions of
yeah,
am I worthy of this promotion? Should I speak up in this meeting? Am I going above and beyond my authority? You know, when you progress, you bump into these things, and you know you overcome them, and you continue to progress. If you don't overcome them, then you remain wherever it is that you are, and
hmm
uh, and apologizing comes up all the time, and it's like I think that there's a real challenge in corporate America right now, and maybe culturally in America in general,
hmm
with
hmm
this whole
Interesting.
idea.
You're right, though. This is a leadership issue because if your boss is always apologizing and saying sorry, then guess what? You just gave them permission for you and everybody around them to apologize and say you're sorry and not follow through and all those things that go with it. So
Oh, yeah, it's like a
it is a cultural leadership issue as much as anything else. But
yeah, yeah. No, I think that kind of to one of the things you said earlier. I think that the person on the receiving end of the apology has a responsibility to identify the integrity of that and either not accept it or accept it under a certain set of conditions. But if you know somebody's just saying it to avoid conflict or to avoid conversation,
Mhm.
I think you have an obligation to call them out on it, just like you did with this guy at the party and the word racism. It's like, wait a second, wait a second.
Yeah,
What
but at the risk being a hypocrite, I've also found myself in recent whether it's a board I'm part of and everything goes to a vote on a committee. Well, and that situation is kind of easy because you don't have a choice, right? Once you get four votes against you, the decision's made, so you just move on. No sense to but there are times when you're turning your head or plugging your nose or covering your ears because something's going on that you so much disagree with,
Mhm.
but you're accepting it because otherwise you're going to get kicked out of the club, right? And
Well, I've certainly, you remember that thing I used to do once a month at the library where we
yep,
talk civil discourse.
yep,
I made decisions on more than one occasion not to speak up in opposition to whatever point was being made because I made the decision. I think that's what you got to do. That's what I got to do.
yep.
Like, what am I going to gain from this? What is this going to benefit anybody, or am I just going to create a deeper level of argument? And it's like I don't want to just be contentious. I want to have an impact, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm in the room. You got to, you know how you read the room. You got to read the room.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
you got to read the room, and it's like I think sometimes you don't speak up. I
Yeah.
probably speak up more than the average person.
For your own
Maybe
good or for your own
I
for
think
good or for bad?
I think most of the time it's good. You
Uh-huh.
know, sometimes you just got to get lucky. You know, you
Yeah.
interpret somebody's position or the mood that somebody might be in or the sensitivity that they might have to a particular topic. I mean, like I pull my punches when it comes to like my girls with respect to certain topics because
Hmm.
what's the point? I'm their dad.
Yeah.
You know, what's the
But I
point?
think that's a good example, right? That's part of of holding back enough because it's for the better good of the relationship or people you care about.
Yeah, without giving up your integrity, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Without giving up your integrity. It's just
Yeah.
like, and I think that just like apologies, I think that we don't give enough thought to just what I was talking about there. What am I trying to accomplish? Who am I talking to? You know, what good will come of this? Will this be positive? Will this push progress? Will this push learning? Or it's gotta, I think you have to give those things some thought before you just blurt out, I'm sorry. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, give it some thought, man. You didn't give that any thought. That wasn't authentic at all. I literally, you did, it was worse. An inauthentic apology is way worse than no apology, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I guess this is timely because part of you wants to be empathetic. You want to be under an understanding person. But when something happens multiple times and you have this person in front of you, in this case, this was somebody didn't fall through, like, I'm not kidding, like 4 or 5 times, and maybe more. And then when we're in person, he was this just apologizing, like, hey, I really want to say I'm sorry. Just and part of me is like, dude, I moved on from you a long time ago. Like, no, I'm not accepting your apology, but I guess if you makes you feel better, then go ahead. At the same time, maybe he had some personal stuff going on, or that's who knows, right? So it's tough sometimes to be a complete asshole versus trying to be an understanding, empathetic human.
Well, I think, I think of the more recent examples like, Disney or Target or, Bud
Mm.
Light or, some of these situations, they're not always about apologizing and stuff, but it's like if I do something and someone says, well, that's racist or that's prejudicial or you're homophobic or whatever, I'm like, I know that I'm not. So I'm not going to apologize for that, you know?
Mhm.
Now, I suppose the caveat would be back to my girls. If one of my daughters is offended, I would come at that a little bit differently. That's more of
Mhm.
a personal thing, but I probably still wouldn't apologize. I would say, look, you know damn well that I'm not such. I'm not toxic. I'm not homophobic. I'm not racist. You know me very well. Okay. So if you've taken something I've said and interpreted it in a way that you contextualize in your own brain, good luck with that. All right. You know, I didn't mean to offend you. I love you
Well,
dearly.
well, hold on though, Mark. I'm not speaking of your children, but that's also assuming that you hold the definition that they don't get to create that definition. So that's that again. Let's just break that down quickly. You're saying that's not true. Well, maybe in your mind it's not true, but in their mind they feel that's true because their definition of what that is could be different than yours.
Well, and we've talked about that's a great point. I think we've talked about this, and I think I used the example of feminism when I was talking to my girls. Like,
Yeah.
before we talk about that, you need to share what your definition is, and I need to share what my definition is. Otherwise, we could
Well, how did
potentially.
that go?
It went very well. It went
Did
very
your
well.
definition was your definition adjusted after hearing their definition?
No, my definition was very.
You want to think about it, get back to me, or so yeah,
No,
luckily
my
this is
definition
recorded.
was.
Did you hear what you said? I said, did your definition change? And you said, well, did their definition change?
I honestly don't remember. What I do,
That means no.
what I took away from it was, look, my definition of feminism is I believe that men and women should have equal opportunities across the board, irregardless. I have no interest in equal outcomes. Equal outcomes is foolish, but equal opportunity, if you believe
Okay.
men and
Now,
women,
I can't wait to hear what was their definition.
yeah, I honestly don't remember, you know, I honestly don't remember. I just remember.
Yeah, Mark, you're like this is like perfect situation for them to come back and say, see, he doesn't listen.
Well,
I almost knew you were going to say.
I was, you know,
You go, no, you don't remember because it doesn't matter. Your definition overrides theirs.
well, you know, I think I'd be hard pressed to have anybody argue the point that my definition was wrong. You know,
Well,
I'd be,
I'm okay. Good point. I'm not suggesting your definition is wrong. I said your definition is different. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but again, the meanings of these evolve over time, and I do think it's generational. It it means, I mean, so it's also
well,
personal. Everybody's different.
yeah, no question. I think there's nuance to all this stuff, but I think that the thing that I find with my kids, the younger generation, at least my girls, is with regard to feminism and masculine toxicity or toxic masculinity or whatever, and racism, they tend to, well, this, you know, 50 years ago, women couldn't even vote. I'm like, yeah, that was 50 years ago. It's not
Yeah. Are
10.
we talking about 50 years ago? Or are we talking about today?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what this generation does a lot. This and the media does it too. It's like,
Oh,
well, this is
our media.
2020.
How about our educational system
Yeah,
that brainwashed them to hate on everything?
yeah. Well, guess what today is?
I think I know
Juneteenth.
the answer, but
It's Juneteenth. What the fuck does that mean? That means that for, you know, 200 years, every historian in the world has been wrong about when slavery was ended. You
yeah.
know, it's
You
like,
know
why?
what Juneteenth means to me for the rest of my life is watching Joe Biden stand next to Kamala Harris and I think some other black dude in a dress uh, try to dance at the same time. Oh yeah, that's right. With Kamala Harris's um, husband, of course, he's white Jewish guy, Jewish attorney guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that will always be my vision of Juneteenth.
yeah,
How
yeah.
awkward that moment was, and how awkward this whole what is it, national holiday
It's a
is.
national holiday, dude. People are off work today.
Yeah,
Anyway, we digress. I think the apologies and the sorries are part of a really disturbing trend that we're teaching people that being overly sensitive to things is okay. As a matter of fact, it makes you a better person if you're overly sensitive about things. And you know, again, not to be the old guy that looks back and says it was better when I was a kid, but it's like, dude, you got knocked down when you were 16 years old. What was the expectation? The expectation was you're going to get the fuck back up, right? That's
mhm.
it. End of story. And it's like, do I want to go into the conditions of who knocked you down and why you fell over and that you scraped your knee and then blah, 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 blah. Well, look, if you need medical attention, then go get some stitches, go get a cast on that broken bone, whatever. But it's like,
Yeah,
life goes on, dude. You're going to be left in the dust if you can't get back up. And this
yeah,
apologizing thing, it's disgusting to me. It's disgusting.
yeah, yeah. We may be off topic, but it is definitely a victim mentality that's somehow evolved into every conversation, every narrative, and I'm not sure it's serving us very well because
You know, but I
it,
also would like to make the distinction, at least from my perspective. What I see on TV is not the world I live in on a day-to-day basis.
I think that speaks for most people. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not. It's like people are nice to me for the most part. They're polite.
yeah.
I reciprocate. Um, we get along. You know, there's no, you know, I don't pay much attention to what people look like, and I could care less where they worship. Doesn't matter to me if they're a man or a woman. You know, I'm gonna open the door for both of you. Doesn't matter. You know, but this apology thing. I don't know. You said it at the very beginning. It triggers me too. I'm very, I said to this kid this morning on the training, I said, I want to give you credit for being so self-aware that you noticed that you were apologizing too much. And then you notice that your mom does it a lot, which is probably where you got that from, because we do
Mm,
get things from our parents.
of course. Yeah.
But I said, here's my response to you thinking that you're apologizing too much. Knock it off.
Yeah. Mark, interesting. It's probably a good way to wrap up this one, but I like the way you circled back to self-awareness again, right? Um, it goes that, and then again, let's make a quick lap, right? So how does uh apology and sorry tie into the other parts of your life, whether it's your mental health or your physical health, right? You're gonna apologize to yourself or say you're sorry for not working out, or eating better, um, or working on your mental health, right? That again, you can cheat yourself out of apologizing to yourself.
Yeah, I
And
think that for me, that's more about forgiving myself as more than it is apologizing to myself. But I think that it does it, whether it's relationships or profession or worldview or health, like you said, or money, we could find areas in all five of those to plug in the appropriateness of an apology. I think it can make or break your career if you're just
oh,
apologizing
no
for everything.
doubt. If
No one's going
if
to have
if you
respect
don't
for you.
follow through and you're always apologizing for not getting the work in or on time or whatever it is, you're not gonna have much of a career. I
Yeah,
don't care who you are or what you do. Yeah.
you're not going to attract the right partner in a relationship. You're going to
Yeah.
attract someone similar, just
Yeah.
whiny bitch.
Yeah.
And I can't directly connect it to money, but I'm sure there's a connection there somewhere. But
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't pay you rent this month. I'm sorry I didn't make my car payment. I'm
yeah,
sorry I didn't pay my insurance payment. I apologize that I totaled the car and now we have no insurance. Oh
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
fits right in. And by the way, yeah, one last thing about this apology. Not only is there this kind of apology problem, but there's also this expectations that they'll that when they say that you're supposed to forgive them.
yeah,
You're right because they said they're sorry. They should. There's almost like this entitlement they get a pass uh, for whatever they did, and they
yeah.
take
That's
no
that's a
responsibility for their actions. So
that's a
it's
significant part of the problem with apologizing over and over and over again.
yeah.
There's so much. You lose such respect. You give away, like you said, your integrity, and
Mhm.
the expectation that just because you apologize to me means I need to forgive you or accept it is bullshit. You know.
Yeah. Interesting though, but yeah,
No, it's an interesting topic. We could probably take it into a lot of other areas, but I just think, generally speaking, if from a takeaway standpoint, at the very least, for consideration to our audience, if you're tempted to apologize for something, just pause for a second and say,
Mhm.
"What am I trying to accomplish here? And is this sincere, or am I trying to distract someone from a particular
Yeah.
topic or conversation?" And just be honest with yourself. I think you got to go back to that self-awareness piece.
Yeah,
And
I think it's a great takeaway for
if
this.
people did that, I
So,
think there'd be less apologizing going on, and the apologies that did exist would have more impact, be more
yep,
authentic. All right, dude.
I agree. Until next week.
Thanks, man.
All right.